What you are about to hear is not a coincidence. It is a thread that has been pulling at you long before you clicked play, long before you even wondered why these words feel familiar. Something beyond your logic has guided you here, and when you reach the end of this story, you may realize that it all had a purpose. There are stories that don't begin with you, but somehow they find their way into you, as if you are both the closing chapter and the unwritten epilogue. These are wounds you never lived through, yet you carry them. Silent loyalties to ancient pains, patterns that echo through your bloodline generation after generation, like whispers in a house no one dares to abandon. They seep into the way families love, into the silence at the dinner table, into the words left unsaid. They are not simply events of the past, but living patterns, passed down like invisible heirlooms. And then, one day, without fully knowing why, you begin to feel an inner stirring. It is not a rebellion, not anger, not rejection, but something more mysterious. A calling to break the cycle, a calling not to deny your origin, but to honor it in a new way, through healing. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In every family, there are fates carried silently, often without names, repeated like scripts. These inherited roles can feel suffocating, as if to carry them any longer would mean losing yourself. And yet, you are the one who notices. You are the one who cannot look away. It is not because you are stronger. It is not because you are braver. It is because you are awake. The pain is still there. It hurts deeply, but your soul has chosen to awaken, even when the cost is heavy. What weighs on you now doesn't always belong to you. What aches inside you did not necessarily begin with you, but you feel it because you are the one who has come to close the cycle. Imagine it this way. For centuries, rivers have carved valleys through stone, shaping the land with unrelenting persistence. In the same way, family patterns, unspoken rules, suppressed grief, generational fears cut their way into the psyche of each descendant. Some grow accustomed to the river's flow, but you feel its current pressing against you, and something inside refuses to be carried away. This is the beginning of the awakening. The moment when you start to realize that perhaps your soul did not come here only to live your own story, but to finish one much older. And though the task feels overwhelming, though the weight seems unbearable, this role is not punishment. It is sacred work. Because when one person awakens, they awaken for many. The first sign that you are the one chosen to interrupt the cycle is a deep, unshakable discomfort with what your family has always considered normal. At first, you may think it's just you being overly sensitive, or perhaps even ungrateful. But over time, you begin to see that your unease is not judgment, it is awareness. It is as though your eyes have adjusted to a light that others refuse to acknowledge. What once passed unnoticed now feels glaring. You begin to notice the patterns, the emotional silence that blankets the room, the quiet sacrifices made without question, the guilt handed down like a family heirloom, the kind of love that hurts but is never spoken aloud. For generations, these things were accepted as just the way it is. But something in you whispers, this can't go on. You may not be able to explain it clearly. You may not even have the words for it. But your body feels it, your chest tightens with it, your soul resists it. You have tried to adapt. You have stayed quiet at the dinner table. You have repeated certain gestures, phrases, and behaviors simply to keep the peace. But each time you silence yourself, something inside you fractures. It is as though your very essence knows that continuing these patterns only delays the healing for everyone. And so the discomfort grows, not because you seek to rebel, but because your soul refuses to be numbed any longer. The pressure to maintain the facade weighs on you more than the conflict itself. Carl Jung once spoke of the family unconscious, that invisible field where secrets are buried, where unspoken grief pulses through the bloodline, where injustices and silences remain unnamed yet alive. By noticing it, by feeling it, you are not imagining things. You are not exaggerating. You are waking up. Those who come to break cycles do not do so from blame. They do so from courage. The discomfort you feel is not arrogance. It is responsibility. It is a sacred inner voice saying, enough. It is the awareness that healing is possible and that it must begin somewhere. And so you begin to listen to the voice that does not come from the outside, but from the deepest part of your soul. A voice that refuses to repeat the script. A voice that honors your ancestors not by copying them, but by giving them the closure they never had. This discomfort, once seen as weakness, slowly reveals itself as your first step into power. Because to feel is to awaken, and to awaken is to transform. The second sign arrives quietly, often when you least expect it. You find yourself deeply moved by stories you never lived. Someone mentions a loss that happened long before you were born, or you stumble upon an old photograph of a relative whose name was rarely spoken, and suddenly emotion rises within you like a tide. You don't understand where it comes from, but it feels ancient, as if your soul recognizes a wound that never belonged to you, yet somehow lives inside you. Carl Jung believed that the psyche does not have the sharp boundaries we like to imagine. It stretches outward, intertwining with what came before us, connecting to something much older and deeper than individual memory. When you feel grief that was never yours, when you cry for stories left untold, you are touching the echo of an ancestral wound, one that perhaps waited centuries for someone to finally feel it. It manifests in ways you can't always explain. A sadness with no clear cause, a heaviness in the chest that feels like mourning, a dream that carries emotions too heavy for your personal history. These are not illusions of sensitivity. They are living memories, carried silently through the generations, waiting for release. You didn't inherit only eye color, traditions, or surnames. You also inherited silence. The unresolved sorrow, the emotions that no one dared to voice. They live in the pauses between words, in the way love was expressed or withheld, in the stories deliberately erased from family conversations. And now, more awake than those who came before, your soul has begun to make space for these unspoken truths to surface. Sometimes it is triggered by a phrase, a family gathering, or a memory that unexpectedly surfaces. And when it does, your body becomes a bridge, a channel between what was denied and what can now be liberated. Others may not understand why you're so affected. They may think you're overreacting, but deep down you know you are not carrying only your own emotions. You are carrying for those who were never allowed to feel. Jung described the soul as a vast field where all that has been rejected, individually and collectively, seeks expression. And you, through your sensitivity, are the one through whom it finally finds voice. Yes, at times it feels overwhelming, at times unbearable, but this flood of feeling is not a punishment. It is a sacred assignment. Because every time you allow ancient emotions to rise, every time you hold space for grief that was silenced, every time you acknowledge the pain without repeating it, you are performing an act of profound healing. It is not martyrdom. It is not weakness. It is remembrance. It is liberation. You were chosen not to drown in this inherited sorrow, but to finally give it a resting place. The third sign is not always obvious, yet you have felt it your entire life. It is the subtle, often painful realization that you have always been the different one in your family. The one whose questions unsettled the room. The one whose presence, even when silent, stirred discomfort. The one who looked at traditions and thought, but why? From childhood, you may have felt that something about you didn't quite align. You noticed details others overlooked. You reacted to life with an intensity that confused those around you. What seemed trivial to them was monumental to you. Where others accepted without question, you could never swallow without inquiry. And so, you were told you were too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too complicated. The family, wanting peace, may have urged you to quiet down, to conform, to adapt. And for a while, you did. You practiced silence, trimmed your edges, molded yourself into shapes that might earn belonging. But each time you bent yourself smaller, something sacred dimmed. The truth is, the very difference you tried to hide was never a flaw. It was a signal, a silent reminder that you were not born to continue the story as it was written. You were born to rewrite it. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, even when it means separating from the expectations of family, culture, and ancestry. And that is exactly the path you are walking. The feeling of not fitting in, the gnawing sense of being out of place, is not a punishment. It is proof. Proof that you carry a different vibration, a new frequency of awareness. You may not have realized it at the time, but every uneasy glance, every strained silence, every label of too much was actually confirmation. Confirmation that your soul was not here to conform, but to reveal, to hold a mirror to patterns generations before you had normalized. And mirrors are rarely welcomed at first. This role can be lonely. It can feel like exile within your own family system. But there is a deeper truth. Your very difference is your compass. The discomfort of not fitting in points you toward your purpose. It reminds you that you were never meant to blend into the old frequency. You were meant to raise it. And so what once felt like rejection begins to reveal itself as calling. You are not the outsider. You are the threshold. You are the place where the old story ends and the new one begins. The fourth sign emerges when you begin to understand that your choices are no longer just about you. Each decision you make carries a weight that echoes backward through the past and forward into the future. Suddenly, you realize that your actions are not isolated. They ripple through your lineage, altering destinies unseen. When you set a boundary, when you choose honesty over silence, when you decide to end a cycle of self-abandonment, you are not merely protecting yourself. You are breaking a chain that once bound your ancestors and preventing it from shackling those yet to come. What once seemed like small acts of courage, saying no, refusing to continue unhealthy patterns, speaking the truth even when your voice trembles, becomes monumental. Carl Jung believed that individual healing is never truly individual. It is collective. When one person in a family system acts from awareness rather than blind repetition, the entire web shifts. The knots that trapped your grandmother, the fears that silenced your father, the bitterness that consumed generations, all begin to loosen because you chose differently. There is an invisible yet undeniable moment when you sense this. You feel it after difficult conversations, when the air seems lighter. You feel it when you walk away from manipulation without guilt and notice a strange peace blooming in your chest. You sense it in the quiet truth that when you heal for more than yourself. Of course, this awareness carries weight. It feels heavy, even unfair, that such responsibility rests on your shoulders. But as your perspective shifts, the weight becomes honor. You realize you are not cursed with a burden. You are entrusted with a gift. You are the living answer to prayers whispered by those who came before, prayers they could never fulfill themselves. Every act of awareness, no matter how small, alters the story of your bloodline. Choosing love without self-erasure. Choosing silence over rage. Choosing presence over avoidance. These choices ripple into places you will never see, touching ancestors who could not free themselves, and descendants who will not need to repeat the wound. And though others may never acknowledge it, though no one may ever say thank you, deep within you there is a knowing. a knowing that your soul accepted this mission before you were born, a knowing that every conscious choice you make is not just survival, it is liberation. The fifth sign comes as an almost uncontrollable urge, a need to cleanse, not just to tidy your physical surroundings, but to clear the invisible clutter that has weighed on you for years. Suddenly, you cannot tolerate what you once ignored. The heaviness of unresolved emotions, the burden of relationships that suffocate, the weight of loyalties that no longer feel sacred. Something inside of you whispers, "It's time to let go." At first, this cleansing may look ordinary. You clean your home, your closet, your desk, but soon you realize that the impulse is not about order. It is about freedom. It is about creating space for what your soul is finally ready to receive. Just as you cannot fill a vessel that is already overflowing, you cannot step into your true purpose while carrying the invisible inheritance of pain, guilt, and silence that was never meant for you. You begin to question the bonds you've maintained out of habit. Are you holding on to people not out of love, but out of fear of conflict? Are you still carrying guilt that never belonged to you? Are you obeying rules that keep you small, rules written long before your time? The answers sting, but they also free you, because once you see what weighs you down, you cannot unsee it. Carl Jung warned that what is buried in the unconscious always finds its way into the external world. The fights that erupt without reason, the exhaustion that clings to you, the constant tension, these are not random. They are echoes of what you are still dragging behind you. And you know now that you cannot keep dragging what your soul never chose. So you begin to release, sometimes tenderly, other times with grief, but always with truth. You let go of inherited patterns. You set down roles that limit you. You stop rehearsing apologies for being yourself. And each act of release becomes an act of love. Love for yourself, love for those who came before you, love for those who will come after. You notice that as you cleanse the outer world, something shifts within. The noise quiets. The heaviness lifts. And it is not a coincidence. Your surroundings mirror your soul. You no longer crave constant noise, shallow conversations, or excuses that protect the wound. What once felt normal now feels unbearable. This act of cleansing is not always visible. Sometimes it is simply saying no without guilt. Sometimes it is allowing yourself to rest without apology. Sometimes it is refusing to justify why you will no longer play the role assigned to you. Each of these choices dismantles the invisible contracts that once chained you to the past. Carl Jung spoke of integrating the unconscious not to reject it, but to free it. That is what you are doing now. You are no longer breaking yourself apart to carry what was never yours. You are no longer hiding behind noise or roles. You are remembering who you are, piece by piece, truth by truth. Cycles do not close when everything is perfectly explained. They close when you finally decide, I no longer want to live from the wound. And that choice, made silently, again and again, is the truest form of cleansing. The sixth sign is perhaps the clearest, and yet the hardest to embody. Even after everything you have endured, betrayals, disappointments, heartbreak, you have not closed your heart. You have not hardened into stone. You have not built walls so thick that nothing could touch you again. And that choice, though it costs you, is sacred. Most people, after carrying so much, would shut down. They would armor themselves in silence, in bitterness, in the comfort of numbness. It would make sense. It would even feel safer. But you chose differently. You chose to remain open, not because it is easy, not because it spares you pain, but because you sense a truth deeper than comfort. That closing your heart may protect you, but it also separates you from your soul. Carl Jung wrote that transformation begins when we stop acting from the wound and start living from awareness. That is exactly what your openness represents. By refusing to repeat the inherited script of shutting down to survive, you are transforming the very foundation of your lineage. This openness does not mean naivety. You no longer open yourself to be accepted, to be loved in return, or to win approval. You open because you understand that vulnerability is not weakness, it is mastery. It is the courage to feel even when it hurts. It is the decision to let pain carve you into depth rather than shield you into hollowness. You have chosen to answer betrayal with dignity, not vengeance. You have chosen to leave situations without resentment, to look back without bitterness, to hold your self-worth even when no one validates it. These are not small acts. They are revolutions. Silent revolutions that change everything, even if no one names them. Each time you remain open, you break the cycle for those who close themselves out of fear. Each time you keep loving, even misunderstood, you free your lineage from the prison of hardness. Each time you let tears flow instead of swallowing them whole, you reopen a door that generations before you sealed shut. And though it often feels exhausting, though at times it isolates you, this is the brightest sign that your soul came to close a cycle. Not through repetition, but through sacred closure. You are showing your family line that love does not have to wound, that survival does not have to mean silence, that openness itself can be strength. Your scars are not proof of weakness. They are proof that you stayed open long enough to heal what others could not. The eighth sign is the dawning realization that what you are doing is not rebellion. It is sacred closure. To close a cycle is not to destroy your roots, but to free them. It is to look at your lineage not with contempt, but with compassion. You are not cutting down the family tree. You are pruning it with intention, allowing new branches to grow, branches that will carry light where once there was only shadow. Closing a cycle doesn't mean erasing the past. It means refusing to repeat what no longer serves. It means taking the silence, the sacrifices, the hardness that were passed down to you and transforming them into presence, self-love, and truth. It means refusing to confuse fear with love or obedience with loyalty. It means saying, "This ends here, not because I reject you, but because I honor you enough to give you freedom." For too long, patterns of pain disguised themselves as normality. Self-abandonment was called sacrifice. Emotional distance was called strength. Silence was mistaken for peace. But you see now that these were illusions, scripts written in times of survival, repeated because no one dared to stop them. You are the one who dares. Carl Jung believed that the soul awakens when someone in the system chooses to be different, not out of defiance, but out of truth. And you are that soul. By embodying consciousness where there was once repetition, by choosing compassion where there was once hardness, by setting boundaries where there was once silence, you are not rejecting your ancestors. You are fulfilling what they could not. This work is quiet. It does not earn applause. It may even earn misunderstanding. But its impact is immeasurable. Because every time you act from awareness rather than wound, the entire family system shifts. What was once inevitable begins to dissolve. What was once inherited fate begins to open into possibility. To close a cycle is to return the past to its rightful place without dragging it into the present. It is to honor your bloodline not by repeating its story, but by writing a new chapter, one born of love rather than fear. It is to recognize that the deepest act of remembrance is not to carry the pain, it is to release it. And so you begin to live differently. You speak truth where silence once ruled. You choose love without self-erasure. You allow yourself rest without guilt. And each choice, though small, is monumental. Each choice says to your lineage, "We are free now." And so we arrive at the final sign, the moment when you realize that everything you've endured, the discomfort, the grief, the loneliness of being different, the weight of choices, the painful openness, has been guiding you here, to this threshold, to this quiet but irreversible truth. This ends with me. These words are not born of arrogance, they are born of remembrance. For you know, deep within, that your soul chose to arrive in this family, in this time, to do what others could not, to close what was unfinished, to transform what was silenced, to turn inherited wounds into living wisdom. And in choosing this, you are not separating yourself from your ancestors. You are honoring them. You are granting them the freedom they were never allowed. You are saying, I see you, I carry you, but I will not repeat you. Carl Jung taught that one of the most powerful ways to heal the past is to live authentically in the present. That is your work now, not to escape your lineage, but to elevate it, not to punish those who came before, but to free them through your awareness. Each time you breathe differently, choose differently, love differently, you are not just writing your own story, you are rewriting theirs. Perhaps you have felt the weight of this path as loneliness, but it is not loneliness, it is consecration. You were entrusted with a task that only the awake can bear. And the very fact that you feel these words as truth means that you are ready. So take this as both recognition and invitation. Recognition that you are the one who carries the sacred key. Invitation to step fully into the role your soul has already chosen, the end of the wound and the beginning of the healing. You are not here to save. You are not here to prove. You are here to embody, to live as a reminder that cycles can close, that love can return without fear, that freedom can be inherited instead of pain. And if this message stirs something inside you, if it awakens echoes you've carried but never named, it is because you are that point of transformation. You are the mirror where the past sees its release, and the future sees its promise. Here, in this very moment, the cycle bends. Here, the old script dissolves. Here, the soul recognizes itself.